Hey guys, welcome back to part number 2 of my KC-135 video build series. We're going to carry on with the main assembly we did in part number 1. This week we're going to build the engines and paint and weather them, and also the gear, and basically get everything finished, so ready for our final reveal next week. Okay, welcome back to part number 2 of my KC-135 build. Part number 1, we got to the painting stage and we painted it, and since I last saw you, you see I've gone ahead and added the decals and gave it a clear coat so it's ready for a panel line wash. Now the decals, first time using MiniCraft kits decals, but they're actually really good, no problems at all. It's just take a while to soak, so I dipped them in the water like always and put them on my plastic cutting mat and left them 5 minutes, and they're really easy to use to manipulate and stuff. Before that, it was just a little bit tricky. The first one I did was a door and I kind of ripped it but managed to salvage it just because I didn't leave it long enough. One actually I left here on my desk kind of soaking for about 10 minutes where I had to run do some errands, and I came back and actually worked perfect. So for a good 5-10 minutes and just be patient, and no problem at all, went down beautifully. So kind of pick this up here a little bit, show you guys, switch my hand, and you can see really liking how it turned out. You can see those tonal differences. Excuse the thunder and lightning in the background, you can hear that. And the other side, make it focus. One thing to note too is I kind of thought this because the windows don't have a frame, it's just the black parts that go into the window. So when I masked the black on the front, I made sure I left a little gap. As you can see, it kind of worked out perfectly, because if you paint it all the way to the top, you're not going to see it with the windows. That kind of makes sense. And then the underneath, if anybody knows what the orange line is underneath, please put a comment below. I'm just curious if it's like what it's for, if it's just kind of like a positioning line or whatever. But USAF and this logo. So really happy how things are going. Yeah, that side. Very cool. So put the decals down, added the clear coat, went gloss because I want to add a panel line wash. If I do matte, it will stick in there. Satin, make it a little bit grubby. Whereas if we go gloss, it's going to stick in those panel lines, but when you wipe it off, it's just going to be, that's it, it's just going to remain hopefully in those lines. I'm not going to wash down here, this kind of rib part. It's just because it's going to be real, I don't want to stand out too much, and it'll be a real kind of pain to get in between, clean it all out. So I'm going to keep the panel lines and kind of avoid that a little bit. We'll be using my usual dark dirt wash. I'm not going to go through how I do it and how I apply it because it'd just be a little bit repetitive. I've used it in all my build videos, so check out the Eurofighter or check out the MiG-29 and go to the weathering part, and you'll see a good 20-30 minutes exactly how I apply my weathering and do my weathering. So dark dirt, power lines for that, and obviously the stabilizers. Hold on, stabilizers. What else? Oh, size. So let's talk about size. So, as you know, when I did a review of this a few weeks back, I was shocked at how small it was. I did some research, and you know, it's right. This KC-135 is a 707, basically enhanced, modernized. But a 707 airframe is pretty small. There's a bigger tanker out there, the KC-10, which is based on a DC-10, so it's a lot bigger. But I went to my cupboard downstairs, my cabinet, and pulled out a very old A320, because I was kind of, I think in the comments below I was going back and forth with somebody and comparing it to an A320. And there you go, it's pretty much the same size. The wings are smaller, the wingspan on the A320, the fuselage is fatter on the A320, but there's not much in it. I mean, it's pretty much the same size as the A320. So every day's a school day, you learn something new. I thought the KC-135 was a lot bigger. Just for kind of giggles, I got this half-built, very large 777-300. I mean, I have to zoom all the way out for this. Like, look how big that guy is. Same scale compared to these. So if you've got a KC-10, it's going to be in between this and size. But this is huge, as you see, 144 scale. This actually got it all painted for Cathay Pacific, and I got some decals. I was going to put the windows on, and they all went to top hot. The decals were terrible. I couldn't manipulate them; they stuck instantly. So I just threw it in the attic, and it needs to be stripped and done with somebody else, I guess. But yeah, this is huge. Again, this is a 144 777. You just see again, see the size against the KC-135 and the Airbus A320. Right, so going off topic a little bit there. So let me pull this out of the way. So I'm going to do the wash, and then I'm not going to do the drogue pods. Let's see here. These pods, part 11. I looked at a lot of reference material. I can't really find many with those pods on the wings, so I'm not going to go with that. I'm just going to do the engines. So really the 4 engines, the ballast tank, and the gear is all got left to do. So the engine's interesting. Again, if I kind of pull it out a bit so you can see it. Each engine is separate part numbers and looks slightly different, outboard and inbound. So I don't want to get the parts mixed up, because if you got these things mixed up, it'll be a right nightmare to kind of figure it out. So what I did was to get one of these guys, I think one of these kind of things with compartments, one of these cheap kind of, we call them like storage tray things. And I took 4 out, and I just labeled them 1 to 4. Then in my instructions here, again, follow 1 to 4. You see I numbered it. So I've got the parts of number 1 already, put them in that drawer. Just keep them organised and separated. So I'm keep all the parts separated, and then I'm just going to paint them all at once and do them all at once. Just because if I did 1, paint it, put it together, you know, that kind of stuff, and go number 2 and then do all that, it's just going to be a lot of time and a lot of airbrush colour changes and that kind of stuff. So where I got paint together, I must just paint all 4 at once. So again, I'm going to, hopefully this little organisation thing will help me kind of keep track of which engine's which, and we'll go ahead and do that. So let me go ahead and stop talking. I'll go ahead and do some work. So I'll get the dirt wash put onto this, and we'll start working on the engines, and we'll come back and I'll show you my progress of how I'm getting on with the engines. The green, the chromite green. This is MRP acrylic. Let me look real quick what number it is. It is. Sorry, so I've grabbed from the paint rack. This is what I used. Zinc chromite primer. It says World War II, but I mean it's good enough for today too. I think it's very similar from the interior kind of color of US stuff. So MRP acrylic 10. So yeah, put it on. I just thought this color would stand out a little bit more, a little bit different. You know, if I did white, it'd blend in and aluminum. So why not just make it a little pop a little bit? So I use that color for the ballast tank. What else I done? I painted the kind of aerial, the top part of the tail. It's not going to focus. It's so tiny. Anyway, painted that with the usual. I coloured the XF53, which I got whitened out, and same with the tail boom. I painted that. I basically primed the whole thing in black with Miss Silver black, and then I really like that kind of black kind of finish for the primer. So I just masked that off and kept it as is for those parts, and just painted the rest of the boom with the same colour as the fuselage. So that's ready for decals and weathering. And other than that, the engines. So went ahead and made a start. See, I've got more separated here. So basically, I just sprayed the inside of the engines with the fuselage color. So it seems like that's close enough. And then it looks like the outside again. That'll be sprayed once it's all together, but that's the same color. And again, I'm using these popsicle sticks numbered 1 to 4, so I know which one's which. I think these all might be the same part, but just to make sure, again, I got them separated by engine type, so I know from the instructions which engine's which. So when I go to attach them, there should be no issues and make things a little bit easier. So that's kind of where I'm up to with that. Next up, I'm going to paint these guys, kind of the back of the engine. It focuses, has a few different colors on this. Look at the picture. This kind of ring around here is like aluminum, and this is more of a steel, kind of dark aluminum, steel kind of color, I think, or a dark aluminum. And then this is a body color, the back part. It's not totally accurate compared to the real pit thing. I looked at pictures online. This is a little bit, you know, it's shaped a little bit differently, but for this scale, 1 to 144, and what you'll see, I think it'll be perfectly fine. So all this detail here, you're not going to see any of that. All that. That's all went inside the engine. You're not going to see any of that, but I'll paint it up anyway. So next up, I'll paint these, and then we'll start putting the engine together. Okay, back again. So been a couple of days since I saw that last little bit. Power editing, go straight onto this. So power line wash is on, looks beautiful, and added some oils. I dialed it back, not too many, just a few little neat oils. It's still a bit wet, so be careful how I touch this, but just to give it a little bit of see, just a little bit of fading and kind of grime, and just, you know, this is a line jet, so I don't want my jets looking perfectly clean. Just a little bit weathering, and to kind of dirty it down and weather it up. As predicted, the horizontal stabilizer snapped off, so it just shows you it's no big deal. It fell off, so I still have the tabs to insert it and glue it back on again. So it just shows you how, you know, it's better to do these guys separately to the very end, weather them and then add them on. So that's done. I've painted up and decaled the boom. It's ready to be glued on the back. Ballast tanks painted in the interior green and weathered, ready to go in. And that's it, other than the engines. So, engines. A lot of work's gone into these engines. I think I spent more work on these engines thus far than I have on the whole actual fuselage main assembly itself. So, still use my little boxes. So, the main kind of part was put together with that little kind of the fan blade in the back, which I use metallic black for that colour. You're not going to see any of that, to be honest with you, in the back. This is the back of it. Yeah. But just to let you know, when these fit together, there's a little bit of a gap. So it's just, this part here is a little bit too big, the fan inside. So you put the fan inside and you kind of sandwich it between the two halves. So I just sanded a little bit off the edge here and kept dry fitting it. So if you just keep dry fitting these until you get no gap and it fits together nicely, then you're good to go. If you just slap them together as is, you can have that gap in the top and bottom. So again, just be careful with dry fitting with that fan blade in the back. So that's that part. Then the bits that go in the back, attached to the back here, they're painted too. That's the main colour we're using for the aircraft at the back. You're not going to see any of this stuff where my fingers are. And then I think I used like a gunmetal for the end. And I did paint that aluminum, that kind of band. But in the end I just used some bare metal foil. That's the first time I ever used bare metal foil, which I'll talk about in a minute. So I just used a little bit of bare metal foil around the edge. Just get a little brightness, and once in the back it's just going to kind of pop a little bit more. So that's where we're at with those. These are the actual main fan blades. I painted again with the aircraft colour on the inside of those tubes, and you can see I'm using the numbers still so I can keep track of which engine's which. And I just hand brushed in some of that metallic black from Vallejo model there for the fan blade colour, which gives it a nice little colour. And so basically what happens is these sit behind the front kind of shroud, and then that slots into the front of the engine. Now, these guys call me some hassle. This is the front of the engine. And you know, as you know, most these aircraft have like the metallic band around the front. So I painted it with the main colour we're using for the aircraft, which is XF53, which we've got whitened down. And then, oh, stuck to my finger. Put it to the side. I don't want to damage it. The paint's not fully dry yet. So I thought looked a lot online about bare metal foil. So I thought I bought a sheet, and I thought, you know what? Let me just show you what I got real quick. This stuff. So it comes basically a sheet, really thin kind of foil, and I've seen online, but a lot of people who are airliners use that for the kind of metallic bit around the front of the engine. Just kind of fold it around and kind of bend it in. It sticks in place and it looks fantastic. A lot easier than masking. So I tried it and it was a disaster. The stuff just fell apart on me. It's a tough shape to do. And again, I've not used this before, so I need to practice it for sure. On these little kind of parts right here that I showed you, it's pretty straightforward. It's just like a little strip that goes around. But when you're working with engines and the shape of the engines and stuff, it was a nightmare. So I masked them up, and then with like yellow Tamiya tape, and then painted it with, what did I use? I used Vallejo model there. I think I used aluminum, and then I went back and used the chrome color because it wasn't quite dark enough, and it was a mess. When I took the tape off, it completely bled through. It was just looked terrible. So I had to strip the whole thing, and then paint it again. So again, so I went for a whole deal. So again, I painted it with the aircraft color, and this time I actually masked it differently. Rather than using the yellow tape, this stuff, the usual stuff, I used the white. This is for curves, it's more flexible. This is Tamiya masking tape. This is a smaller one, I think 3mm for curves. So I masked around the outside using this, backfilled it with some yellow tape behind it just to cover any extra areas, and sprayed it this time with trusty Tamiya LP11 silver. I didn't thin it, I just sprayed it thick, kind of straight. Well, it's kind of thin, it's a lacquer paint, so it's not thick anyway. But I sprayed it straight from the airbrush, kind of this time very gently, just misted it on basically, very thin coat, and then the outside and the inside, and it turned out perfect. As you can see, nice line. Zoom. There you go. You can see a nice line around the front, so I'm very happy with that. So I'm going to let these dry for a few hours, then I'm going to clear coat them to protect the paint, and then basically what happens is a fan blade goes on the inside, like that, and then it just glues onto the front of the engine. I will be using super glue just because what I use super glue. Any painted parts I use super glue, just a very thin amount, because if I use extra thin it's going to affect the paintwork. Right, so we are almost done. As you can see, the gear's on. Now our instructions here, if I show you these little guys, I'll just glue these on before you paint it. They're all the same color. There's no point painting separately like I didn't add them on. It was just kind of waste. So yeah, definitely do it. The ballast tank, I actually put it upside down. As you can see, it has to kind of, this fat lip kind of goes on the top, so it kind of goes this way around if you're looking at jet. So this is the underside, and then this is, you know, it goes this way. So I just pulled it out, no problem, and just put it the right way. Obviously I have the decal across the middle. And the main doors, you have two options. The typical position, as you see here, is I put this side on, it's closed. They do have it open, which they cycle for maintenance. So if you're doing some kind of maintenance, you could have them open. So after all that painting the ballast tank and weathering and stuff, you're not going to see a thing because I'm going to have them closed. But if you have it open, you just basically stick it up in its open position. But I want to kind of show you we'll display it in a kind of flight line or a taxiing kind of position. So I'm just going to put them down as you see on this side. This is just placed in, really good fit, no glue or nothing, so I could even change that at a later date. Other than that, looks really good. The only other issue I had was with this guy right here. See this part right here? This is too big to fit. Now, if you put them in before the gear, it might fit, but they're touching the wheel, which is all wrong. So what I had to do was, I can't even find the part now, it's so small. Oh, here it is. I did one side already, so what you basically have to do is, if you can focus this, is cut the bottom part off so it fits in next to the gear. So if I show instructions, it might be easier. So basically, along this part here, I have to cut this off, this bottom bit, cut it off, and then just leave the top part, and it will stick on okay. It's so small, and it's underneath the aircraft, you're not going to see it. But that is pretty much it. That's the only bad fitting part in the whole thing. Now, weathering wise, for gear, lately I'm into the Nolan oil from Citadel. Just find it really thin. It's not too overpowering, like someone like Tamiya panel line wash and stuff. So I just did the wheels and the gear and everything in that, just light coating of that to give it some weathering. And finally, just kind of slide this out of the way. I don't want to kind of break it. I'm going to right out. I'm just going to use one of these display cases. Again, I can't show you because it's I'm going to get jets in the way. But it's this 19808. As you see before, I use these all the time. Love these cases. They're really cheap. Keep the dust off. So I use the Coastal kits. This is a 72nd scale base I glued on the bottom. It's going to be fine. It's probably double the size of 144, but for what I'm doing, I think it'll work okay. It's what I have available. It's going to look better than nothing. So I'm going to put the jet on this. I measured it. I think go diagonally. It should just fit in the case okay, hopefully. So we'll see. So what I'm going to do now is, this video is going to come on a long time. A lot of stuff talking about. So I'm going to end the video now, and then I'm going to come back next week and do a final reveal and show you how it all turned out in the end and talk through some of the well, I don't really have any issues. It went together beautifully, but it's kind of talk together high level what I did and how it all turned out. So until next time, thank you for watching and goodbye.